What's going on, everybody? It is the one and only Q from Retro Q Gaming, back at it again, and here we are with lucky number 7. That's right, episode 7 of our beautiful little Quack Experimental Podcast. Don't worry, I'm purposely withholding the name, if you will. It'll come eventually. If you don't know what it is. But anyway, unfortunately, there's not too much to talk about this week, but it does give me a little bit of an opportunity to throw in one kind of personal topic that I want to go with too. Just kind of a little retro thing as I go. Anyway, let's get started with the whole deal because, well, there's not too much, like I said, but anyway, let's do it, right? So first off, we have Capcom with a little bit of an interesting announcement. They have announced that Devil May Cry is coming to the Switch. Now, this is strange for a few reasons, and that's why I think it's kind of weird, because it's only the first game. They've only announced that the first game is coming. They've also given no indication so far with the screenshots, the announcement, the title, the listings, anything like that. There's no indication whatsoever so far that this is the remastered version that has shown up on Xbox 360, PS3, PC, PS4, and Xbox One. So far, there's been no indication that it's that one, which is why I find this very strange. It's why I have it on this list, because realistically, this isn't a very big announcement for me to talk about. I mean, Devil May Cry, PS2 game getting ported to the Switch. Of course, it's a late port. It's an old game. It's the only thing that comes to the Switch. But when you think about it, it's the first game only. No indication that it's the remastered version. And the big thing I want to talk about... Oh, by the way, it's coming out this summer. But the big thing as well that goes with it is I want to see what the price is like. Now, the reason why I say that, I have no interest in buying this on the Switch, but I want to see what the price is like, because you can easily pick up the HD remaster collection of the first 3 games, Devil May Cry 1, 2, and 3, on any other platform for peanuts. They're frequently on sale for, I believe the normal price is like $20, maybe $30, but they're frequently on sale for a portion of that, a fraction of that. And when you look at the price of what Capcom are charging for Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 0, and Resident Evil 4 ports on the Switch, which are $30 each, that's a bit excessive, isn't it, in that regard? But hey, it's Switch owners. They know they'll buy anything, so that's why they get away with it. So I'm curious to see how this comes with the price-wise, but we'll see how it goes anyway. Now, sticking with Capcom for a second because, well, it's, why not? We have Capcom posting record high sales for the financial year that would end at the start of April 2019. Now, this has been in part to 3 major games. They've listed a bunch of other stuff and all as well. I mean, just obviously, there's games that have done okay, there's games that have done well and whatnot, but they've really, really knocked it out of the park in 3 specific situations. These are all modern games, so no Switch ports, guys, but they're all modern games, and they all have fairly significant sales numbers, or at least the last ones we know of have fairly significant sales numbers. So the main bulk of Capcom sales are down to the Resident Evil 2 remake, which is a fantastic remake. As of the last reported numbers, it had sold over 4 million units. There's no exact number put out on it. This is all from the most recent investor call and all, but they didn't give numbers, but a couple of months back, whenever it was, they had sold 4 million units. Now, they've also accredited to Devil May Cry 5, which has sold over 2 million units, but that's a more recent game and, well, to be honest, not as big as Resident Evil 2 anyway. Doesn't have as much of a following. Devil May Cry in general is a decent series, fan base size wise, but you get my idea. But the big one, the creme de la creme, the pièce de résistance, getting tongue-tied, for Capcom is Monster Hunter World. That's right, remember guys, Monster Hunter World, that game that came to not the Nintendo Switch, famously. Oh yeah, and just also, fun fact to remember that Nintendo did not save Monster Hunter, PlayStation did, PSP to be specific. But anyway, Monster Hunter World, the biggest Monster Hunter game of all time, has sold 12 million copies. Let me say that again, 12 million copies in just over a year. That's exceptional. Now, that they had sold like 8 million copies in 6 months. They had sold 3 million copies in 3 weeks. It was huge. In fact, Monster Hunter World is Capcom's best and biggest selling game of all time, beating out Resident Evil 5 as its previous top. But you see how big this is. So, Monster Hunter World, this will be the format and the formula going forward. When you look at what was it said in the Switch? If I should say, not when, if they get a new Monster Hunter game, it will not be the mainline entry, it will not be the main format, it will not be the main series, formula, whatever. From now on, going forward, we have, thanks to Xbox One, PS4, and PC, Monster Hunter World being the new blueprint for the future of Monster Hunter games, which I can thank everyone for. One big lamenting issue I've had for so many years at this point is that I was always so upset that Monster Hunter was limited in what it could do because it was shackled by the confines of portable hardware. Now, I'm not just saying portable hardware in the sense of the 3DS, because obviously before that it was on the PSP, and that had very, very sharp hardware limitations just like the 3DS. But going forward, that's not going to be the case. Monster Hunter World almost feels like an entirely different game in the best of ways. And now we'll see a lot of that kind of stuff going forward. We'll come back to talk about Monster Hunter World a little bit later in the video. But before we move on, or before we do that, I should say, next we have our boy. We have our boy, Randy Pitchford, and he's at it again. Now, first, it was Randy Pitchford versus Troy Baker, Troy Baker as the voice actor for Reese. Then it was Randy Pitchford and the Epic Store, if you will. Now it's Randy Pitchford versus Dave Edding. Now, Dave Eddings, Dave Eddings is the voice of Claptrap, or formerly the voice of Claptrap, because he will not be reprising his role in Borderlands 3 for Claptrap. Now, I personally haven't gone and watched the new trailers and whatnot. I can't remember if he was in the reveal when we streamed the reveal event, but I can't remember if he was talking and all in the other one. But allegedly, Claptrap and his voice actor sound a little bit older in this one. I haven't heard it myself, kind of holding off, we'll see how it goes. But Dave Eddings, he is actually ex-Gearbox staff, and it turns out he left Gearbox on, we'll call it kind of a sour note, but he was willing to put all that aside to come back for the fans and reprise his role as Claptrap. But there were some, let's call them expectations and some requirements for him to do so. Now, because officially, while he was already Gearbox staff beforehand when he recorded voice for Claptrap in previous games, he was not compensated extra for Claptrap and his voice acting. Now, apparently this was all normal. He wanted to do it. He was okay with doing it for free because he was being well paid for his job and all that as well. But it gets a little bit weird because he was no longer working at Gearbox. He said, okay, I'll come back if, you pay this, that, and the other. I'm requiring this, this, and this. We'll get to what they are now in a minute. And they said no. Now, there's been a bit of a Twitter shitstorm about this as well because, well, Randy Pitchford being Randy Pitchford. So, out of nowhere, or responding to a fan, just with no major thing, Randy Pitchford said that Dave Eddings would not be coming back as Claptrap because even though he was offered, well, according to Randy, he was offered a very generous offer, and he was very generously compensated for his salary and all beforehand, which is kind of completely irrelevant, really, if you ask me, and that has no bearing on his current one and what he's being asked to do. But apparently it was double, the offer they made him was double the going rate, if you will, and it was very generous, and he turned it down. Now, Dave Eddings came out and was not happy about this. Now, I'm going to read these ones here, but yeah. So, he was willing to do it for free. Now, this is what Dave Eddings said, okay? Dave Eddings says he was willing to do it for free as long as he got past royalties already owed to him. Now, I'm not going to get too in-depth in that because I don't know the ins and outs of Gearbox and their 100, not so much 100%, but their, what do we call it? I'm drawing a blank. their contracts and how they do stuff like that and all as well. That'll come into play now in a minute a little bit more, but still. But so like I said, he was willing to do it for free other than compensated for existing royalties already owed. And apparently he wanted an apology. Now, this apology, which no one had known anything about the reason for beforehand, was apparently he claims that Randy Pitchford assaulted him at GDC 2017. Now, before we go any further, I'm going to say this one thing. Randy Pitchford is a shithead. I'm not gonna mince words. We know I am not too happy. I'm not a fan of Randy Pitchford. Now, having said all that, I'm fair, right? As much as I want this to be true, to prove Randy's an even more of a shithead, I do require proof and evidence before I can fully commit to calling him a shithead for this specific thing. I dislike Randy. I hate him in so many ways. He's a shitbag in so many ways that we all publicly know about. However, this one, the other ones have proof. The other ones have all this, that, and the other. This one doesn't yet. So, we'll see how it goes. But anyway, that's moving on. So, he commented on Randy talking about his generous previous payday while at Gearbox. But again, that shouldn't factor into the equation at all. That was his previous job. That he was paid properly for his previous job. He obviously did the work. He did it well. He just kind of took a shot at Randy. He's like, well, my previous salary for my job should have no bearing on this, that, and the other. And it just kind of makes sense. Now, the funny thing as well is Gearbox, so according to Dave Eddings, Gearbox supposedly offers royalty shares if you take a lower salary. Now that can work really well. Like, if something really sells really well and really popular, you can make more money that way. But they have lower salaries because of that. Now it can go either way. It could go in Gearbox's favor. It could go in the staff's favor. That all remains to be seen. But what's interesting about that is that he accused Randy of siphoning $12 million away from that royalty pool just so they had to pay them less. Now, where those $12 million went, allegedly, who knows? They could have gone to himself somehow in some shady way. It is Randy Pitchford. They could have stayed in Gearbox. They could have went to Take-Two. They could have done something. Who knows? But imagine a company. Imagine, let's say, a president of a company, CEO, whatever it is, head of a studio saying, yeah, we will give you a lower salary and a share of this pool if you take the said salary. And then, before everyone can take the job and all, he reduces the pool by half. I'm not saying it's a $24 million pool, but I'm just saying, like, here's this pool. This is what you could have a slice of this, but then it's really a slice of this. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of shady within itself. But anyway, it's really, really strange situation. Gearbox have come out and said that they're already, they can't talk about the whole siphoning $12 million thing because it's part of an ongoing investigation in a criminal lawsuit. So they can't talk about that anyway for obviously legal reasons as well. They did quickly mention something about the assault comment and that it's kind of, they did it in a very politically correct kind of way, that it is, they said his comment about it and his accusations and whatnot are a bit wishy-washy. They didn't obviously say wishy-washy, but they kind of implied that it's a little bit wishy-washy. Now, I forgot to add it the other day, but I wrote these notes at the start of the week. Now, since then, we've found out a little bit more about it. Now, I'm going off the top of my head here because I didn't write it in the notes. So if I remember correctly, there are people that have corroborated Dave Eddings' account on all of this as well. One of which, there's been a few of them, but one of which that I can still remember the proper story for is the co-founder of Gearbox. Now, one of the co-founders of Gearbox allegedly witnessed this whole thing. So what supposedly happened, or what he saw, was Dave Eddings was in the recording booth, ready to record some audio or whatever it was, and Randy Pitchford burst in, pulled his headset off, got him in like a headlock or some kind of hold, gave him a wet willy, which is so fucking weird. Like, what kind of grown man does that? I mean, I suppose it's Randy Pitchford. Then apparently tackled him, just out of nowhere, completely random, and everyone was thinking, holy shit, what the fuck just happened, really? Because that can, as you can see, that can be a problem. Now, Randy Pitchford, who knows? It's Randy Pitchford. So, we have to see how this one will go. We just don't know how it'll play out yet. Um, it's just a guess. It's a guessing game at this point. I don't know, will Randy Pitchford be sued? Will he be found out about this? Well, who knows? Who knows? One thing I will say is if this does come out to be true and all as well, like I said, even with those accounts of other people, I still require evidence to fully hold this against them. I don't like Randy Pitchford. I wish I could just automatically hate him for this, but I'm a logical person, and I hold even a shitbag like this to the same standard as, let's just any other one else that I require evidence for and whatnot to. But anyway. So speaking of shitheads and shitbags, let's talk about Kotaku. And Kotaku being Kotaku, as I like to call them. So there's a game out there called Our World Is Ended. Now it's one of those let's just say for argument's sake, it's an anime game. You know the kind I'm talking about anyway. But it's an anime game, an anime game. Now, one of the writers for Kotaku, excuse me, let me correct myself. One of the bloggers for Kotaku, because they're not actually journalists, they're just bloggers. Which is funny, because they claim to try have a real job, but if you look at the bottom, it specifically says blog, 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 blog. Everywhere you go, it's blog, blog, blog. Anyway, back to the point. So, there's a blogger there called Mike Fahey. And he was playing the game, this, that, and the other, and he was really enjoying it until it got to specific parts. And then he wrote a big article about it, because it's cool and trendy to be outraged about, well, anything these days. Because it's Kotaku. I like to call them SJW Blog Taku. So, because, you guys know. You guys know already. But anyway, he has been publicly pushing and campaigning to get the developer, P-Cube, to censor this game, Our World Has Ended. Now, the funny thing is, right, he wants them to publicly censor this game because of, and I quote, sexualization of a teenage character. Now, okay, sexualization of a teenage character. I'm not going to talk any specifics about that because, frankly, I don't know the game. I've seen a couple of pictures in relation to the characters in question and whatnot. But here's why I want to talk about it. Remember how I always say social justice blog taku are a fucking joke and they're just kind of outraged journalists and they always have an agenda 24/7? This blogger, who is pushing P-Cube to censor this game because of one of their characters, he has an extremely hypersexualized tattoo of a teenage character on his body. Scarred for life. He has it on there. And he has the fucking audacity of trying to be a wannabe journalist to do this. Obviously, this tattoo, by the way, if you're not sure, it's someone called Etna from the Disgaea series. But the character is hyper sexualized, and she's obviously a young teenager, and he has the audacity to try this. This would be like, I don't know, what's a good example? This would be like, let me find a good example. You know what? I can't think of one. I can't think of one off the fly just like that. I don't know. It would be like, I don't know, a KKK member going, trying to ban hate speech. Despite them using it, they would be trying to ban hate speech because someone used it against them. There you go. That's a good example. It screams Kotaku being Kotaku, doesn't it? Everything they do has an agenda. They don't really talk about games or anything anymore. They just talk about what's problematic or what they perceive as problematic. Because realistically, nothing like that they ever fucking talk about is problematic. Except maybe like 1%. It's just like a toxic workforce or whatever. But that's different. That's not their shitty agenda. Like they're pushing on almost everything else. I don't know. Please stop using Kotaku, people. Just really. I don't know why anyone uses it in current year. I mean... I just got a flashback there when there was a time, I think it was last year or maybe the year before, when some YouTuber really highlighted and damaged the Kotaku's and games journalists' egos so much that the whole website basically turned against this random YouTuber, coming out and putting statements against him and all this, trying to insult him and all. One simple little joke really highlighted how fragile they all are over there. It's so funny. The best part about it was when one of the bloggers at Kotaku at the time, she came out and said something along the lines of, "Oh, Kotaku's not here to tell you what games to buy," and then someone linked up an article from like I don't know 2-3 months prior that exact author wrote on Kotaku, and it was like, "Oh, Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, which should you buy?" 100% vintage piece of shit people that work there. It's such a booty website. I don't know why anyone uses it anymore. I haven't used it in years. Ever since, I got woke, because I'm using the Kotaku lingo there. But let's move along anyway. I could rant about them being fucking tools all day, but I won't. So moving along, we've got Riot Games and their staff walkout. Now, Riot Games, if you don't know, are one of the biggest PC developers in the world. They have multiple different projects. And they're almost all huge games. But the big one that everyone knows them for is League of Legends. Now, unless you're a certain punk, you have no idea who I'm talking about. But anyway, League of Legends, that's their big claim to fame. Now, there have been problems with lawsuits or wannabe lawsuits and contracts and all that there just very, very recently. And a lot of the staff, or, well, I shouldn't say a lot of the staff, there's a significant number of the staff, roughly 100 of them, which is about 1/25 of the company. There's roughly 2,500 people working there. Roughly 100 of them staged an official protest and walkout of the studio. And this was to protest the forced arbitration clause in a lot of the contracts, maybe even all the contracts, or at least all the contracts in certain levels, like say all the developers, all the programmers, I'm sure all the higher ups and all have better contracts and stuff, but all these other ones, because of like unfair working practice and all like that, there's a clause in there called forced arbitration, which basically means you cannot sue the studio, that you have given up your right. This clause in the contract means that you are completely obligated to allow the company to enter arbitration should you have a proper grievance with them. Now, what that means is, instead of going to like a labor court or just a court, depending on the country it works in, what they would do is they would go to a third-party company and they would force arbitration. That way they would have someone like that, a third-party company, look at it, and everything would go from there. Be it, the company might say, okay, you owe this person $1 million for whatever it is, or they might look at it differently. It wouldn't take the law into consideration too much, or at least not 100% down to a T, like a court would. So naturally, they're preventing that, because that's exploiting your workforce, basically. That's exploiting your team and your developers, because you can basically treat them worse and they don't have a proper recourse against it. So a lot of them were protesting against that, because a couple of them have wanted to sue the company but been forced into arbitration because of the clauses in their contract. So they're looking on removing it, they're looking on remedying it and all as well, because this is of course a problem. Some of it was one of the things really that, when you think about it, what are they called? The devs of, just devs in general, game devs, have been pushing for a union. So this would obviously help them. Riot have said that they're looking into removing it and replacing it with something else and whatnot, but we have to see how it goes. Companies are like this. They're always paying lip service, but at the same time, they're obviously always trying to protect themselves. So it's questionable at that. Now, our next topic, anyway, isn't really much of a topic at all. It's a very, very small one. It'll take me like 2-3 seconds to talk about. 1, 2, boom. But the Hitman HD collection has been added to backwards compatibility on Xbox One. Now, that doesn't require talking about an announcement in any way, shape, or form, but it does highlight an important thing I do want to mention. That because of the Xbox One and the backwards compatibility and how they've done it with the 360 and how they've done it with the OG Xbox 180, it really kind of highlights an interesting point, because there are now 588 games from both previous consoles as backwards compatible titles on Xbox One. Now, it's also going to be very interesting to see, because of how new consoles are going to work with the x86 based architecture, the PC style hardware that is basically just going to be plug and play, plop in and go. It's going to be interesting to see if this stuff all carries over, the Xbox 360 stuff as well as the OG Xbox stuff, because we do know, well, let me say that. We don't know, but it's almost a 100% guarantee that the new Xbox One, that the next Xbox, the Xbox 2.4 as I like to call it, strangely enough, no one's kind of questioned that name yet, but it's almost an absolute given that that's going to have backwards compatibility with the Xbox One. And because it will work in the same way, essentially, it could possibly have the backwards compatibility from OG Xbox 180 and the 360 just kind of work by default. But the big thing I want to talk about with this one is the fact that 588 games are backwards compatible. That's great. That's fantastic. They're doing really well on that front. Ever since backwards compatibility was added a few years ago, they have 588 games, nearly 600 games, that all play for free if you own the disc on either of those platforms. That's true backwards compatibility. Now, some people will say, "Oh, it's not true backwards compatibility. If you put in a disc, you have to download a digital version." Yeah, if you put it in the disc, it will download a digital, modern, working version. But you don't pay anything extra for it. It's still backwards compatible with your existing discs, your existing software that you own. That's way better than what any of the other companies are offering. Sony don't even have backwards compatibility on the PS4. PS1 games don't work. There's a very, very small selection of PS2 games which you have to re-buy, and the discs don't work, so that's not backwards compatibility. It doesn't have backwards compatibility with the PS3, for everyone knows why. And look at the Switch, that doesn't have backwards compatibility at all. If anyone says, "Oh, but the Nintendo Switch Online service," I'm like, that's not how it works. You're paying extra for a game as well. That's not how it works. That's not backwards compatibility. The Xbox One has backwards compatibility, which I'm very, very happy about. In fact, over the last, what is it? I'm looking at it, it's May here. Over the last year, probably even year and a half, since the start of last year, 2018, I was going to say 2017, I've played more backwards compatible games on my Xbox One than I have Xbox One games, because there is no Xbox One games to play. Badum tish. But yeah, it's great. Like, I wish they would do that. One of the big reasons I'm a fan of backwards compatibility is my primary platform is PC. PC is like the prime backwards compatibility example, a candidate. There's games on here from 10, 15, 20 years ago that I can run just like that. Because I suppose technically you don't call PC backwards compatible. But you see my point. Having all the games in the one place, on the one system. I don't have to worry about setting up an Xbox 360 to play a couple of games. I don't have to worry about setting up an OG Xbox if I want to play a certain game. So I'm a big fan of that. And while it's not the hugest, biggest selling point in the world, is hugest even a word? Bucket it is now. It's something I find really handy. For the longest time, this happened late last year. For the longest time, I was dying to replay Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3. Specifically in the HD collection, but I couldn't be bothered setting up my Xbox 360 or my PS2 or anything like that. And then they added it to backwards compatibility on Xbox One. Played the shit out of it. Within the first couple of days, absolutely destroyed it. It was brilliant, loved it, did so much in it. It's great. It's one of those things, it's nice to be able to have there, and it's like, you get the pang to play a certain game. You don't want to have to go dig out an old console, connect everything up, and then play and whatever. In the case of the Xbox One, I had a digital copy already. You just download it, done. Plays just like that. Almost like it's the exact same thing. It was brilliant. Brilliant. And of course, some of the games are Xbox One X enhanced, which, while it doesn't have the biggest improvement in the world, because like it's not going to change a game from, a 360 game to an Xbox One X game, but it increases the resolution, which is always a nice thing, and it can possibly make the frame rate a little bit better. Now, I'm not talking when, like, let's look at what's the game? I've drawn a blank. I have my Xbox One X beside me. Red Dead Redemption 1. On Xbox 360, that game is a fluctuating mess, because it's been Xbox One X enhanced. Runs at a solid 30 FPS. Solid 30 FPS, I know. But you see my point. You see why it can come in handy. Funny enough, I actually talked way more about that than I originally planned on. I was thinking I'd talk about it for like 2 minutes, but here we are going forward anyway. Oh, don't do this to me. Okay, I thought my recording fucked up for a second. So, moving along, anyway, we have Sega up next. Now, this is a very, very brief thing. He said that on the last point too. But Sega have acquired a new dev studio. They've acquired 2 Point Studios, which is the studio behind 2 Point Hospital. And 2 Point Hospital, as you probably already know out there, they're the developer behind the pseudo sequel of, not so much, spiritual successor of Team Hospital. So, I haven't played it yet. It looks good. I keep meaning to buy it and pick it up, but I never do yet. I will get around to it. It's going to be good to see what they do next, because apparently it's a good game. And when you look at what Sega Studios can do in the simulation, management, and RTS, I suppose it's not really an RTS game, but when you put it in that genre and all, they could do some seriously good stuff in there. Mainly because, look at Creative Assembly. They work under Sega, and they make the Total War series. And that series is great. It's a big, big series. It's extremely popular. It's extremely well done. So, I'm not saying they're automatically going to be, what's the word? Not dissolved, but absorbed into the rest of Sega and the rest of like Creative Assembly and all these other studios. But they have the network and the ability to make bigger and better games, get the support that they need. So that's gonna be cool to see what they do going forward. Now, next up we have the PlayStation State of Play. I skipped this one at the time because I was busy doing stuff. I was actually streaming at the time, but I was skipping this one. So there wasn't really too much announced that was very interesting, at least anyway, for during the State of Play. Now, they put out a new trailer for the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Then they have said that there's more info coming at E3. Well, they said more info coming in June, which is when E3 is, so that makes sense. One important thing to note, everyone is going crazy about this. Oh, PlayStation exclusive, this, that, and the other. This game is not a PlayStation exclusive. The Final Fantasy VII Remake is not a PlayStation exclusive. If you go back and watch the very first announcement trailer, it says first, or play it first on PlayStation. That does not mean it's an exclusive, it means it's a timed exclusive, unless anything has changed. What do I think it's a timed exclusive about? Well, it wouldn't surprise me if it came to PS4 first, and then Xbox One and PC like together 6 months later, or a year later, or a month later, or whatever it is. But obviously, if this holds out to be true, that the PS4 version is going to be the first one, which is a shame, because that means I have to play it on console hardware, which is going to be awful. But anyway, I digress. Now, they've showed off a couple of things. They showed off the gameplay and all, which was really questionable. We all know there's a lot of people out there, myself included, that have major concerns about the gameplay, the change in gameplay style for Final Fantasy VII. It looks like it might be button mashing style, kind of Final Fantasy 15-esque, which is absolutely diabolically terrible combat. But one part of me theorized that what if it's more akin to Chrono Trigger in 3D? Now you might be wondering, Q, what are you talking about? Chrono Trigger in 3D? How does that battle system translate over? Let's say, now of course I could be wrong that you could just move around and hack and slash everything like it's Final Fantasy fucking 15, but let's look at it from a different way. Maybe your characters are kind of stationary. Then maybe like an active battle thing or an internal battle ATB bar goes up and you get to enter in a command. And then you enter in, I don't know, like attack or cross slash or braver or whatever. And then maybe he moves Cloud or whatever moves automatically in 3D to attack that character. Like in Chrono Trigger, your characters are stationary till you enter an attack, then they move in and attack. It's just an idea. It's just an idea. We don't know how it goes, but we'll have to wait and see. We'll see in June. Hopefully we get a release date that they can commit to. I don't think it's coming out this year. I would expect it to be out next year, but I don't know. There's still a big question about if it's going to be episodic or not, because they originally kind of, not so much teased it, but they heavily hinted or implied that the Final Fantasy VII Remake was going to be episodic. And they said that, oh, each episode will be like the length of a normal game everywhere else, and it allows us to release parts of it sooner and get it into fans' hands while we do more expanded stuff and all. I don't know, I'm so worried about it. It's one of my favorite games of all time, so I'm obviously very, very worried about the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, if you've seen the trailer, I'm not gonna lie. There's a scene where Cloud's walking along and Ares runs up beside him. She gives him a flower and all as well. Oh yes, and by the way, it's Ares, not Aerith. Just saying. And she hands him the flower and whatnot as well. I'm not going to lie, kind of choked up a little bit on that. I'm hit by a pang of nostalgia because, well, growing up with Final Fantasy VII is one of your bigger games. Yeah, it hit a little bit close to home. But anyway, the only other big game of the PlayStation State of Play was Medieval. Now, Medieval finally has a release date. Thankfully, unfortunately, it's a little bit far off. It's coming out in October of 2019, which, I mean, I guess it makes sense. It's coming out around Halloween. But here's my big concern for it. My big concern. Both trailers have had the same problem when showing off Medieval gameplay. The frame rate is in the low 20s. It's not even 60. It's not even fluctuating in the 45 to 50 range. It's not even a solid 30. Obviously, this is in development footage. It's in development gameplay. There's optimizations to be had and everything. But as it stands at the moment, it's in the 20s. It's chugging along. I really hope they get it out there and they fix it and all that, because I'm really looking forward to this game. This remake, the Medieval remake. It's a great game. I love Medieval in general. Both trailers have been in the low 20s. It's rough. It's rough. I really hope they fix that. But going back for a second to something we talked about earlier on in the video, Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Now, that's the new expansion for Monster Hunter World. We've known it's existed already. We've known release dates and whatnot as well. It's coming out later this year. And there's not too much to talk about in that regard. They are targeting a winter release date. Just like Monster Hunter World, its base version, it's coming out on console, Xbox One and PS4, not Nintendo Switch, because I can't run it. But it's coming out later this year. I believe it was September, October, but they're targeting a slightly later winter release on PC. It looks really good. I can't wait to see it, especially with like the new high quality texture pack and all. I still need to go back and play that game a lot more properly. I've just been so distracted now. But anyway, moving along, we have another game that I don't care about the game and I don't want to talk about the game specifically. It's just more of the politics and more of the situation around it. We have Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Breakpoint. This is a new game. It's not just an expansion for Wildlands or anything like that. Although they have kind of, they put out like a DLC or an update, I think it is. It's a free update as far as I know, that adds some new story and new quests and whatnot. I think it might be a timed event or something with John Bernthal from The Walking Dead, The Punisher. He's in it. And it leads on from Wildlands into Breakpoint, which I think is kind of strange because it's not the same game, it's not a sequel, but I don't know, it's not DLC, it's not an expansion. So I think that's kind of interesting. Whoops. Good job. Anyway, back to my point. As you'd expect, a la The Division 2, Anno 1800 or 1888, whatever it is, this game is an Ubisoft game and it will be exclusive to the Epic Store and Uplay. Is that really exclusive? It's on two different stores. But you know what I mean. It's not coming to Steam, which is the big thing to take away from this. Which I think is very, very funny. Because just a few days after... Now, it's pretty safe to assume that there's money exchanging hands behind the scenes. Like most deals that Epic buys. But I think this is funny because this is days after Tim Sweeney has come out and said, if Steam would commit to 88% revenue share split with no major strings attached, we would stop buying exclusives. Here they are a few days later, buying exclusives. I say, granted, they haven't committed to an 88% revenue share, but I just think it's funny that it was so close together that it went back and forth like that. But speaking of game publishers and everything, we have Starbreeze. Starbreeze, for those of you who don't know, which is probably a lot of you, they don't make too many games, but they made Payday 2. They also made that amazing, fantastic game of Overkill's The Walking Dead. Yeah, we all know that high quality success of a game. But they have come out and said and told investors that they won't last another 12 months if they don't secure some major funding and investment, which is pretty damning really as well. Now, obviously, Payday 2 is their big cash cow. Okay, because, yeah, Payday 2 is their big cash cow. The Walking Dead and everything else they do is kind of trash, but Payday 2 is their big one. Now, the big problem with Payday 2 is it really hinges on microtransactions, like 6 million microtransactions in that game. But it really hinges on people spending money on microtransactions. I don't remember if Payday 2 is free to play. I believe Payday 2 is free to play on PC. You have to buy it on consoles, if I remember correctly. And the big thing they worry about is, or the big thing they rely on, are all the microtransactions. So that can be a problem. For games that are free to play, that require microtransactions, that's not the best model in the world. Now, it can be extremely popular and extremely profitable. Look at FIFA Ultimate Team, although technically I think you need to buy FIFA for that. But FIFA Ultimate Team makes $1 billion a year for EA. So, you see what I mean? It is technically, I guess you could call it free to play. But it has its own separate thing. So, Payday 2, on the other hand, not so much the case. It's obviously not a huge, big deal in that regard. Look at, again, here's probably a better example. Look at Fortnite. Fortnite's a free-to-play game. It exclusively makes all its money on cosmetics and microtransactions. Now, they're succeeding in it. Starbreeze and Payday 2 are not. So I think it's interesting that they're in such a financial situation where, I mean, after one game flopped, they're in trouble. They're in some serious trouble. Now, the funny thing about it is, I say funny, but you'll see why now in a second. Usually when you hear about companies posting profits and losses, they're like losing $12 million, losing $28 million, or whatever it is. Starbreeze have a net loss of $12.8 thousand. Now, that might not sound like a lot of money, but let's look at it in two different ways. One, they're still losing money. It's not profit. They've lost money. So when they pay all the devs, all the licensing, all whatever it is they need to do, rent, who knows, whatever else there is, salaries, they lost money. They did not make a single cent, a single euro of profit in all their stuff. So even though 12.8k doesn't seem like a large amount, it's still a loss. It's still completely negative. So I just think it's kind of funny that it's 12.8 thousand in an industry and something that's usually in a situation and a report in the millions. It's in the thousands. But again, at the same time, it's still a loss. They're still losing money on that regard. Now, this one is some brand new news, actually. This one is, I've only found out about today. I don't know if it was announced today, but I only saw it today and I felt like talking about it. There's an upcoming game called Outer Wilds. It's a fan-funded game. I was going to call it Kickstarter, but it's crowd-funded on something called Fig. But the developer Mobius Digital have come out and said that while the game was originally announced to be coming to the Epic Store and Steam, there's now a bit more details on it. There was no details specifically about it before. They just said Epic Store and Steam. Now, here we go again. Yes, it's that time again. We have another developer taking a significant amount of money from Epic just to put their game on there with a timed exclusivity deal. So the developer Mobius Digital has said that yes, it is coming to Epic Store with timed exclusivity and then eventually coming to Steam. Now they put out a statement. Now you know what? I wouldn't usually talk about this because it's a smaller niche indie game and we've mentioned it several times before. But here is where it gets good, right? Here's where it gets good. You ready? The developer, Mobius Digital, has put out a statement on their Fig updates page for backers. Now, here is what they said. Rest assured that we read all of your comments, and our goal is to bring the game to your preferred platform as quickly as possible. Let me read that one again for you properly. Rest assured that we read all of your comments, and our goal is to bring the game to your preferred platform as quickly as possible. The preferred platform is Steam. Steam. As quickly as possible is not a year after fucking launch. This is the thing that annoys me. PR spin that is just, not even spin, it's just 100% blatant lies. Imagine if I told you, if I was stabbing you in the arm and just said, don't worry, I'm not going to stab you, this is fun. and I'm stabbing you and you're not enjoying it. Bold-faced lies is what this is. Now, can I fault the developer for taking all this money? I don't give a shit about that in this case, this specific case, in this situation. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the PR bullshit, the bold-faced lies. Like, imagine me holding up this. This is a bottle of water. Delicious, hydrating water. In fact, I'm going to drink some of it now in a second. So imagine I was to hold this up, which is clearly a bottle of water, and to say, oh yeah, this is my favorite energy drink. This is my favorite caffeine and sugar infused energy drink. It's clearly a bottle of water. Bold fucking faced lies. Developers like that piss me off. Studios like that piss me off. PR companies, community directors, whoever the fuck it is, piss me off. Apologies for drinking on the mic real quick, but I'm talking. Anyway, let's move along because I just think that's... if I harp on about that for too long, it's just going to annoy me. Now, last up, this is my little interesting one that I just kind of wanted to talk about. A little bit of a retro thing anyway. So I have been rewatching, I guess you could call it, the fan-made remakes of the Shenmue HD 1 and 2 film. Now, I've played those games several times. I love those games so much. Still remember it all. But there's a nice little bit of being able to watch it again. Now, for those of you out there who aren't familiar with it, there is an official Shenmue the movie for Shenmue 1. It was released in Japanese cinemas back in the day, and it also came on a DVD with the OG Xbox version of Shenmue 2, because obviously the first game wasn't available on the platform and you needed to know the story before it, so they included it with it. Now, there's a YouTuber out there called Mr. 357 who, through the use of Dreamcast emulation and mods and whatnot, he recut the entire thing. He made his own version of that. Now, the very first one, the fan remake of Shenmue HD the movie, is 4.5 hours long. Obviously, I watch maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour at a time, whatever it is. But it's just so good. And the second one, because it's a longer game, is 8 hours long. 8 hours long. I'm looking forward to getting back to that one. But these are fantastic. I highly recommend everyone watching them. But the reason why I'm talking about this is with Shenmue 3 launching this year, hopefully pending no impending delays, I guess. It's going to be launching in August of this year. After a 20-year wait. Well, can you call it... No, not a 20-year wait, because I'm thinking Shenmue 1's launch. It's like an 18-year wait. And it's kind of crazy that it's actually happening, because I love that series so much. I've spoke about it many, many times. I've been part of the Save Shenmue HD campaign, the Shenmue 3, whatever, for several years. And I've even pledged that my very first Kickstarter pledge was to Shenmue 3. And I love these games so much, and it's all about their legacy. Their legacy, what they've done. I mean, when Shenmue launched on the Dreamcast 20 years ago, it kind of changed the open world genre. Now, sure, it's no GTA 3 because, they're different styles. People would automatically think, oh, open world, GTA, this, that, and the other, Look at almost every game that came post Shenmue. Look at Final Fantasy games, whatever it is, just there's other series too, but they all kind of wanted to be Shenmue. They wanted to emulate what that could do thanks to new hardware. Now, Yu Suzuki has created masterpieces in that regard. And it just makes me so happy that we have Shenmue 1 and 2, and soon Shenmue 3. I hope there's no massive delay on getting my copy, because I am getting a physical backer exclusive box Steam key. Hopefully they don't pull an Epic Games switcheroo, tish. But I mean, just the legacy and the love, not only in these games, but in the community for these games as well. And just, I mean, every time I watch it, every time I play it, every time I do anything Shenmue related, if I go on, check out one of the other channels on YouTube, if I watch someone play it on YouTube, if I watch someone play it on, I don't know, Mixer or whatever it is, there's just almost unrivaled, like, love and sense of community and reverence for the games in the series. It's fantastic. I love it so much, both the community and the games. And I can't wait to finish. I'm just about at the end of Shenmue, the movie HD remake 1, and I'm looking forward to moving back onto 2 again. It's going to be so good, and I can't wait. I can't wait, and it really comes across that everyone else loves it just as much. There's so many people out there that have just such regard for it. Even if it's something, even there's a lot of people that are playing it for the first time that are, more used to more modern games, but they're praising it because of the love of what goes into it, and you can see it. Well, what they wanted to do, it really highlights it, and it stands out well. You can say what you want about the voice acting, the rest of it's just fantastic. But anyway, that's it for our main stories and main stuff that we're going to talk about. So I'll just end off with our usual little one. So what am I doing? What am I playing? Etc. Etc. So as it stands at the moment, the main focus I'm doing is Borderlands 2 co-op. We just hit level 50 last night. Yeah, that's right, last night. We hit level 50 last night. We've moved on to Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, and we're going to be grinding the shit out of that. We're going to do every single side quest. We're going to do every single DLC. We're going to hit max level, and then we're going to grind to our heart's content. Get all them orange drops, because it's going to be glorious. Level 72, here we come with all that extra stuff. I think 72 is the max. All them DLCs, all of it. So good. Quips, haikus, for days. Best stuff ever. 0 for the win. Other than that, I just played Life is Strange 2 Episode 3 the other day. Streamed that here on the channel. That was actually why I didn't stream the PlayStation State of Play. They were both on at the same time. So I was doing that one because I felt that one was a bit more important to me. I wanted to do that. So that was kind of good. It was kind of good. It wasn't as crazy and over the top as I expected an Episode 3 to be, especially after how Episode 2 ended. But we'll have to see. The big problem I have with that is the protracted delays and gaps between episodes. I mean, the previous episode was out at the end of January, I want to say. Possibly could have been February, but I want to say it was in January. Next one is out in August, which isn't the biggest gap in the world, but it's roughly the same. And then the final episode is going to be out in December. It's over a year. And, let's see, September, October, November, December. It's going to be 15 months from initial launch. When the big problem with that is you start forgetting stuff, you get emotionally detached from the characters or situations and whatnot, and that can hurt the game and the experience. So, maybe if you're considering playing these kind of games, play them after they all launch, like I did with Life is Strange and Before the Storm. But other than that, we've got Yakuza 0. Now, I'm almost finished Yakuza 0. I have a couple of chapters left. Someone told me there's, is it 16, maybe 17 chapters? I think I'm on like 13 or 14. So I'm close enough to the end. The story is really getting crazy, and I want to see how it goes. And then I can obviously take a little bit of a break and move on to Yakuza Kiwami. Because, well, I'm not going to go straight into Yakuza Kiwami. I want to play some other games that I've been kind of feeling out. They'll come in another video that I'm going to talk about, obviously, when we have another little section like this in them. But other than that, I've been testing stuff out. I've been doing some test shots. I've got some lighting. I've got some, some, not so much props, but I've got some setup. I've been doing test shots with lighting and whatnot as well. I've had this little bad boy here. And I've been looking at putting together a new video. Good video. One a little bit, not so much different, but what I'm going to be happy about. I have to get it all sorted together. I have to get the lighting down. I have to get everything. Lighting's a fucking bitch, by the way. Lighting is hard to do. I have to get it to the point where I'm happy about it. It's very hard to do because I'm extremely pale, but we'll figure it out. I hope everyone enjoys it when it does come out. You'll know the one I'll mention it in anyway, but you'll know the one I'm talking about when it does happen. I do have another one that I'm going to be hopefully working on soon as well. That's a separate one. And it's going to be something everyone's done to an extent. It's going to be done in a different way. It's going to be done in a very Q way. But I'm not going to spoil it just yet. Now, at the same time, the other video is actually something everyone's done too. And just putting my spin on it. So we'll see how it goes. But anyway, that's it for the end of us here. Because we're finishing a little bit early than usual, but at the same time a little bit longer than I expected to do. So let me know. Here we are at the end of the 7th beautiful little episode of the Quack Experimental Podcast. And I will say, let me know in the comment section below if you have anything that may pique my interest, anything you may think tickles my fancy. feel free to slide into the Twitter DMs for the exact same reason. They are open for anyone who wishes. Hit the appropriate button to let me know how I did on the video. Maybe a little thumbs up, maybe not a little thumbs down. I don't know, I can't influence you. You know, Mentalk, the Mind Taker. Although technically I would be, what's his name? Shadow? Leprechaun? I don't remember. It's been Shadow? It's been so long. Anyway, let me know all that. Maybe hit the subscribe button, ring the little notification bell so you can see the next one whenever our next episode comes up next time, and you know, whatever else comes up in the meantime, be it say new live stream for games or whatever, or you know, obviously high quality exceptional videos, whatever it is. But anyway, that's it. We are out. I will see you guys next time. But before we go, I want to take a second to remind everyone, winners don't play switch ports.